Just as a heads up, so you guys know. Let's head into the Zoom room where we have a superintendent of education, Jon Fernandez, standing by. Good morning, Jon. Thanks for joining us.
Off a day, Chris and Sabrina and Jason. Good morning. I'm sorry about yesterday. I was on a call from 5 in the morning until just whenever. It was in a daze. I was actually fulfilling my responsibilities with the Western Association of Schools and Colleges accreditation organization, and so we just in order to make the time frames work, I had to be on at 5 in the morning. I think the rest of them are in Hawaii and California, so they weren't as groggy as I was, but it was a good meeting because we're on track to accredit all GDOE schools by the end of this school year. Our target was last year, but due to COVID-19, we had to postpone the last couple of schools, Harry S. Truman and Chief Brody, who were seeking their initial accreditation. But that'll get done this year. I think a lot of it's being done virtually, but again, the work goes on and we have to adjust. So thank you for giving me an opportunity today.
Well, of course, Jon. I don't know if you were able to catch any of the discussion yesterday with Senator Joe Augustine. One of the things that he said that kind of pricked up my ears was in talking about GDOE. He was saying basically that, they're getting all this, federal money. They're going to get $110 million. And so he kind of alluded that they're going to look at the federal funds you guys are getting and then minus that from whatever budget local funds you might be getting. Is that a concern for you guys? And with these federal funds, do they actually replace local funds, or do they have are they earmarked for specific uses?
Well, I heard in the aftermath of the interview, several people called me, including some fellow senators, about is this true? Because the appropriations chair said there's federal money that they can just use to offset what would normally be in your local budget. So I placed a call to Senator San Augustine, and we'll try again. I wasn't able to connect with him yesterday, but I think he's well aware because we've explained it to him as well as to our Education Committee Chair, Senator Nelson, that the federal funds come with a condition that the government has to provide what they call a maintenance of effort, and that maintenance of effort is based on the last 3 years of government support for elementary, secondary, and even post-secondary education. And so we have to report on that to USDOE. We have to sign an assurance that is going to be the commitment. And then we have to provide information as to what the last 3 years of support has been for, again, elementary, secondary, and post-secondary. So that includes UOG and GCC as well. It also includes the charter schools, and provide that information to USDOE, which we have. I think the legislature, in our last discussions over the prior budget or the prior discussion of these federal funds, had asked whether we could apply for a waiver, and that is the case. We can apply for a waiver, but that won't take place until September of this year, when that process will begin, and we'll be able to file for a waiver. So again, from my standpoint, that maintenance of effort is an assurance that we provided to USED, and we ought to be trying to meet that assurance and work in good faith to ensure there is continued support on the local side for education, because these funds that are coming in are meant to be a part of the COVID-19 response, which is what we've been trying to do to protect our students, go to distance learning. And then these next funds are really going to be focused on reopening schools. What is it going to take to maintain and sustain a safe school environment so that more kids can come back for face-to-face instruction? So that's how we're going to target it. I do think that we did communicate through our chairman, Mr. Mark Mendiola, to the senator that if there are things that we requested in our local budget that we are able to fund with our federal funds. So for instance, not knowing that federal funds were confirmed, when we put the budget together, we included, money for COVID-19 supplies, like continued supply of face masks and all the other things that we're currently using federal funds for. But now that the federal funds are here, if we're able to just, get confirmation that those items will be covered, for sure we will, reduce our request to the legislature and let them know that. I think in addition, we're looking at some other investments in our school facilities that could be more medium and long-term investments to keep our campuses safe. So we're looking at the air conditioning replacements with HEPA filters, making sure that we look at possible renovations to restrooms to enable better and easier sanitation and sanitization. Looking at even things like canopy repairs and other repairs to parts of the facilities because of the need for to maintain physical distancing and what that might mean for how kids are going to be situated around the campus. So those are all able to be factored in. Unfortunately, I would probably caution that these items that are in our budget request are in our request and are typically things that are not funded in our local budget, so they aren't necessarily going to be easily replaced. In our budget that we will be submitting this weekend, the board approved a $373 million request. 343 million of that is for operations, so that would, I guess, be our normal operating budget costs. But the 30 million on top of that is really for things that usually require longer term funding. So these are the capital projects that that we haven't been able to fund because we haven't been able to issue bonds to borrow money for the schools to invest in these longer term projects. So those are where you get those restroom repairs and canopy repairs that are typically issues at our old facilities. So we'll have that discussion with him and inform them, keep them informed about the use of the funds, and of course the rules and regulations that apply to the funds that are coming our way. Mm-hmm. We do hope that that there will be additional support for state and local government, which will be every other government function and agency. In the new Biden stimulus package that is going to be considered by Congress. But in this last round, the only funding that came through was for education, I think really because of the effort to open schools and ensure that we're safe to reopen.
But the $373 million budget that was approved, how much are you estimating then could be supplemented by or replaced with federal funds?
Well, we have about $110 million that was provided in this next round. And of that amount, 85 million is around that mark is estimated for GDOE public schools. And the remainder would be allocated to our private and charter schools based on our enrollment numbers. So that's part of it. It's not just all GDOE, it's also for private and charter schools. So of that 85 million, we are going to be sitting down and we're working through the first week of February, we'll be going to our schools as well as our private nonprofit partners and doing a needs assessment focused on how we move forward to strengthen what we're doing now and hopefully make our campuses safer for reopening. So there will be a needs assessment that has to be done as part of this process, as part of our consultation process that we have to do as part of the request for funds. And then after that, we'll be able to submit a budget proposal to USDOE and get them to sign off on it. And then we can confirm, the use of those funds. So again, of that amount, I'm not sure at this point, but we'd hope to offset, a good amount of the request. And so what I mean by that is if we're able to get more technology, if we're able to use it for some of our facility needs that are related to COVID-19, reopening, if we're able to use it for instructional materials that we are also requesting in our budget, I think we could make we can make a big difference. Probably not the full 85, but maybe, maybe half of that we could maybe, line up against our requests there in the budget. So it's going to take some time to go through the numbers and really do that type of math. But what's going to happen in my estimation is that it's going to reduce our request. But a lot of those items are not typically funded in the budgets that we do get, because I would say that 80 to 85% of our budget goes right to personnel. You get the additional, $12 million that'll go to utilities. and then you've got some remainder for your essential contracts and supplies, which is not as much. And we've also endured a $30 million cut since 2018. So with all that going on, I don't think we're going to be in a position to say, hey, great, you're going to be able to repair all the air conditioners and then say we're taking that amount out of the budget. It really wasn't included in our normal budget, because we're talking about major investments. So we'll make it. So we'll take advantage of the federal funding. We'll let our leaders know what that means in terms of reducing our budget requests. We'll remind them that in the federal funding requirements, there is a maintenance of effort requirement, and help them understand what the U.S. Department of Education is going to be looking at. And then when it comes to working out the local budget and seeking a waiver, we'll work with them on that as well. We know the island's in a tough spot, because of the revenue projections. We're not blind to it, but at the same time, we have an obligation to make the request that we feel is needed to meet all the mandates, that are in our law, to meet all of the collective bargaining agreement requirements, and to meet the needs of our students. So we'll put that forward to them, and we'll look forward to a discussion over the next 5-6 months as we head into budget season.
All right, so has there been this maintenance effort when you talk about, well, we've been cut $30 million since 2018?
Well, I think the maintenance of effort by the time it gets submitted will be including the last 3 years. So it'll take FY20, which is it'll take more recent years. I'm not sure if it'll go as far back as it might go as far back as 18, but it might be more 19, 20, and 21 by the time we're done with it. So we're not sure it'll capture all of the the changes, but we're going to be submitting the information that we have. The governor's money, the governor does get $33 million in additional funds for education as part of the second wave. And those requirements, as we understand, are also applicable to the funds that the governor gets. So we're going to have to work together to really, respond to USDOE's requirements and figure out a solution to that. We certainly don't want to lose. The consequence is you return the money. I think that's ultimately the consequence. I would hope that USDOE is not going to be in position to say, well, give it right back. But, I do think they put that language in there for a reason. And I think probably to ensure that it wasn't really, just taking federal money and absolving the local government of any education funding, obligations, but really to work in partnership with local funds to try to get the school systems through the pandemic. Again, but a lot of moving parts, a lot of, things, a lot of, fine print. And we'll be working with our Senator St. Augustine and Senator Chelina Nelson as well, to ensure that they are clear and we can all be on the same page when it comes to how those funds are going to be used.
Does the $373 million check off all the 14 points of the Adequate Public Education Act?
Yeah, that was the intent. That is the intent. We had a very, really robust discussion with our board, because January is you're kind of the last stages of finalizing the budget, but we also had several new board members. So it was very interesting to be able to kind of introduce them to where we were in the budget process and how the budget came to be constructed and what the mandates and requirements are in law and in our collective bargaining agreement. And so we did have a healthy discussion with our board members, our new board members especially. I think of course, just as I was, you look at the number, you say, wow, it's a really high number. But there is also a lot of history to this. Part of the history is, with the 14 points being there and an obligation to ask for what you think you need to fulfill those mandates. Second of all, there's this ongoing discussion about what happens when you don't ask for money, right? You don't ask for the money you need to fix your facilities, and you go back when something happens, people say, well, we say, well, we didn't get the resources, and someone else will say, well, you never asked for it. So I think our board has said, well, we need to ask for this, because we don't want to be in a position where we know the resources aren't there, but we have to make it clear to our elected officials that there are needs and these are what they are, and we'll work together to figure out what the best way is to fund all these needs. So it's a partnership, and it's not easy. We submit our budget directly to the legislature. We're not in charge of revenues, nor do we really have insight into what the revenues will be. So once that revenue picture becomes more real and people get an understanding of where we'll be next year, we definitely will work with our legislative partners and our governor to come up with something that we hope will, enable GDOE to get through the pandemic and meet the needs of our kids. But as you can see, we also believe very strongly that our public education system provides a lot of support, to our community during these times, and we've been very blessed to be in a position to help the community and to help our students and their families. So we do want to make sure that we keep those supports intact.
John, are more parents trying to get their kids into face-to-face, and how soon will we expand the face-to-face enrollment?
We're gonna be discussing that with the board. I would say in the next couple of weeks. We obviously acknowledge that these were low numbers, compared to our normal, enrollment, and we actually were planning for that. We knew what our parents and students were feeling. Not all of them, majority of them want to stay in distance learning. They're not comfortable yet coming back. And probably because of the vision that you have in your head when school's in session, the crowded buses, the crowded schools, and how are we going to keep our kids safe? I think once we our families started to see through the media and through the coverage of the school openings, I think they looked and saw the campuses and said, hey, wait a minute, this is not what we would normally imagine. So perhaps it is, an opportunity to come back safely to school, and the community seems to be in a better position from a public health standpoint. So, I think we have about 400 to 500 students on a waiting list throughout the district, about maybe a total of 500, and that doesn't account for those students who showed up on the first day without registering, and some of the schools went ahead and said, okay, we have that capacity. So maybe for 1 or 2 students we're able to deal with that. But for those schools, I think JFK has about 100 students of that 500 on a waiting list. And, it's easy to accommodate, elementary school students when you have the capacity. But, high school, you're really talking about lining up schedules for those students in terms of the classes they need. So it gets a little bit more complicated when you get to larger numbers and higher grades. So I think what's happened, in addition to those 500, there are students who were able to show up, and if the schools had low numbers, some of them went ahead and accepted them and allowed them to come on the as part of the face-to-face cohort. What will happen now is, we've got a couple of weeks under our belt. Maybe an additional week next week to ensure that everything's operating as anticipated, and to ensure there aren't any concerns or issues. And then we will work with the schools and the board to determine how much further to expand. And my estimation is that having seen classes that have been, maybe as low as 2 to 3 students, that there is capacity, for additional students in those classes without changing the schedules at this point. Just welcoming them, ensuring there are, students in the classroom without violating the 6-foot distancing requirements. If it gets to a point where we have more students that require us to start changing schedules and start to affecting the overall, structure of how we're doing the 3 models of learning, that's where I think the schools are asking for more district guidance. When will that take place? How do we ensure, that safety is maintained, and what will the impact be on how we're scheduling our students? We were very flexible in our first semester, but that caused a lot of difficulty for our teachers and our administrators, because we had a lot of students going in and out of model of learning as they decided what was working best for them. So this time we wanted to kind of stabilize it, and especially make sure that our teachers and staff at schools for face-to-face felt safe. Another boost to this, though, is really the vaccination efforts that are underway. I also think that after we get through the second dose, which is scheduled for at least I think for the early ones on the first day would be February 20th, around that date. That'll really enable our school employees to feel more comfortable with with more students at school.
Mm-hmm. What's been the response?
So we'll work with we'll work with the board. I know there's a lot of pressure from some parents saying, "Oh, I want my kid now. I didn't sign up," or now I got to go to work, or whatever the issue is. We want them to be patient. We'll get to that discussion, and hopefully we can let the public know what the plan is shortly.
What's been the response from your employees getting vaccinated?
Just a sigh of relief. I mean, really, I have to just thank the governor, thank public health, the vaccination committee, and GRMC and AMC for just making this work. But I have to say, when we started this past Friday, as late as Thursday, we were still up in the air because it required a lot of things to take place. I mean, we needed some time to notify our employees. We needed some time to confirm the vaccines would be available, and just all of the logistics around making sure that it would go smoothly. So so we started on Saturday, and that was the first day, and I was there when I saw the employees coming in. A lot of them just relieved. I mean, they came in early. I mean, some of them were just anticipating, it's going to be a long line. Really, there were long lines for those who arrived early, but once it got going, we had supplemented GRMC's team with 22 nurses, so they were able to double the number of stations they had originally set up. And I think everyone just kind of went through very smoothly and efficiently. And I think the longest or the bottleneck really was the observation room, where you had to be there for 15 minutes just to ensure that there aren't any reactions to the vaccine. So all understandable. But other than that, I just think everyone was in good spirits, even if they waited, and got there extra early just to be safe. So I think now that we're at Teason, we have another day today of vaccinations with AMC, the American Medical Center. They're working through Teason High School to vaccinate another round of educators. This is for our central and southern employees. Once we get through that, I think our teachers and staff will feel a lot more comfortable being there, knowing that they're prioritized. Now, we know it's just the first dose. I think the message for everybody, not just our employees, but if you're getting vaccinated, it doesn't mean go away from the safety requirements. Wear your mask, keep the distancing, hand sanitizing, and cleaning, your areas. I think we really have to maintain that. The vaccination doesn't protect the community, if we're not there at a point where everybody's got the vaccine. So we know that our kids don't have the vaccines. We know that that many people are still making decisions about whether to take advantage of the vaccines when they become available. So I just want to urge, and of course, with the first dose, you don't have the full, the maximum, protection that you would have after the second dose. So a lot of people, I think, felt relaxed as well. And we said, don't relax. It's good to have relief, but keep it up. Keep up the safety requirements, because we're doing really well as a community. We're staying the positive, percentages are staying low. Kids feel comfortable. Parents are wanting to come back to school, but we can't really relax at this point. We got to keep up our due diligence on being safe and taking all those precautions.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any updates on the repairs to the Southern High School auditorium? Was that public law?
Well, we're very thankful. Governor signed off on the bill, and Senator Moylan, and I actually spoke yesterday. He was interested in, basically in, making sure that we were, had their support in moving things forward. So we're looking at a meeting with the Department of Rev and Tax and GDOE probably early next week, so that we can just make sure we understand how everything will work together. It's very easy for us to look and advertise and say who wants to be the private partner in here, take advantage of the tax credits. But I don't know anything about what happens after that. So I wanted to make sure that Rev and Tax and GDOE were able to figure out how does that tax credit work, what would they need to do to avail themselves of that back end way to fund these projects. So we will definitely do our part, but we're going to sit down and work it out with Rev and Tax and GDOE as to what the details are, and then we want to push for private partners. I think our school, our Southern High School administrators and our Southern High School teachers and families down there are excited about the opportunity. And so I think we'll all do our best to seek our private partners, just getting those details right for the other parts of the bill.
Any update on a third party custodian?
Well, we're working with them. I think part of what our challenge, not to say challenge, but there's a reality that goes into a shift in administrations, and USDOE, we're waiting for more word as to how that shift in leadership will work itself out, so that we can reestablish the relationships and the connections, to the appropriate leadership at the department. So, when an agency goes through transition, that also affects the agency staff. So they'll, we'll continue to talk and work, on communicating on our regular, updates for them. But as far as things like, approving travel, setting up the next schedules, I think they're going to be waiting to ensure that it's in line with, what the new leadership, is going to support, just so that we're all, on the same page, and we don't have any miscommunication. So we have our new chair, Mark Mendiola, our vice chair, Dr. Mary Okada. I mean, both have experience with the federal, side, having been a part of our conversations before, and then Dr. Okada, in her role at GCC, also interacting with US DOE. So, we have a strong team, a strong leadership who are really going to focus on trying to make, carry us to the end zone with the third party. But we're going to take a couple of more weeks probably to sort things out as to, what's next with US DOE once they, have themselves organized on their end.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking for it. We think it's positive. It's just one of those transition types of issues where, I don't think the final decisions about just basic things like getting approval to have the next round of monitoring. They're going to want their superiors to know, that that's the plan, and make sure that everyone's up, I guess, briefed and updated.
Mm-hmm. Anything new on the FMP?
Which is that? I'm sorry.
The facilities master's plan.
Oh, so yes, right now we're at a stage where they're gathering data. I mean, we started this at the end of last year, and we keep our monthly meetings up. So our next meeting is in a week or so for our February meeting, and as part of where we are at this stage, we're gathering a lot of data collection right now. So they're working on projections for enrollment. In order for them to project enrollment, there's a lot of things that they also need to get. So we're providing them information about, the work that the board did on our reassignment of attendance areas, because that was one key, facilities planning effort that really kind of shifted the enrollment. Not all of that's fully implemented, but it said here, here's how the enrollment should be divided amongst the schools. That's where the proposal for a new middle school, at the campus of Chief Brody Elementary came up. So we're giving them that information. We're giving them updated information on the compact impact, the student impact on our enrollment, and the funding that would be associated with that. So we're giving them those reports. And I think they're also doing their own research on the updates with regard to the defense, Department of Defense, the military buildup as well. So right now it's focused on getting a good projection enrollment. We're going to move into a stage where we're going to do a more active stakeholder engagement. So of course we really need them to be in touch with the relevant agencies that are going to be part of, partners in the facilities plan. And then we'd like to do more public engagement as we move, beyond February. So the goal is still, to get this plan done by November. We hope to see a big push, once we get to March and out in terms of a public push.
Mm-hmm. Where are you guys in terms of cutting down that number in reaching out to the students that you haven't been able to, or that haven't been attending school?
Yeah, we're done with the home visits. I mean,
okay.
the social workers really moved quickly to address that. So they did find of those remaining 550 students, there were about 200 to 250 students who were still unaccounted for after the home visits. But for the most part, what they believe has happened for those students is that they have moved off island. Okay. And this comes from the neighbors, and coming from relatives, and so a lot of that home visit also involved just checking in on people who that might have that awareness of where they are. So that might include people in the next door neighbors or in the community who could give them some insight. So that's what they're getting a lot of in terms of the 250 that are left. But of the others who were able to be contacted, those students are registered at their schools and are getting the being tracked and attended to by our our outreach team. So we were just very glad to get the authorization to go out there. And as you can tell and hear in the general, environment, that a lot of issues related to children, at home during this pandemic, I mean, just alarming and concerning to all of us who know that, some of our kids need to be back in school, need to be back in an environment that is better in terms of, safer for them than they might see outside of school. So that's something that we're going to continue to work with the governor and lieutenant governor on jointly.
And I'm sorry, I just had one more question, and this was just if you had any
Sure.
updates on whether or not GDOE has stood up everything for the expanded Wi-Fi access to students, whether or not the libraries are ready to go.
Yeah,
for-
I'm hoping, it's Thursday now, so we're looking at issuing a public information regarding what we are planning to launch. I believe it's up to 8 schools next week, which will be our community learning centers. So the final details are being nailed down, but we're looking to launch next week, and we'll be able to clarify what those schools are that are ready to open, and what those hours can be used for those who are interested in going to schools. Of course, it requires the same kind of physical distancing and hand sanitization and all of that, but we're making technology available and the internet access available for those students and families who are in need of that. So stay tuned on that. The other issue with the Wi-Fi access, we'll also be putting on information. We started the registration process, and I have to tell you, the latest report I got was about maybe 360 applications, and I thought it would be a lot higher. So we're going to make a big push, but it surprised us because it was just like our pushing the laptops out. We planned for just maybe 8,000 applications, and we got about half of that number. So we're going to have to really work with our community. There is a part of our community that just wants to do hard copy, and we're concerned about that because I don't think that's the best quality of interaction that we can have with a student, even though there are reasons that are probably very valid for those families in terms of what works for them. So we're going to have to work on that. But I anticipated we can have a lot more demand for going online, having internet access, and so far the applications are low. We're still in the procurement process for that, for the Wi-Fi, and so it's not going to happen this month, but we hope it will complete in February. Getting the bids in and working with the vendors to finalize that procurement. But right now, the numbers are really relatively low, and so we got to do our own research and to figure out whether we're not pushing it hard enough, or whether the families are just not not in need of that service. And so we'll continue to monitor that until we get this done.
All right. I guess we'll just, like you said, stay tuned for more information about those 8 schools. So thanks for coming on, John. Stay safe.
Okay.
Appreciate
I'm
it.
happy. Thank you. Same to you. Same to all of you. Thank you.
Right on.
Have a good
Have a
weekend.
good weekend. Okay. 8:58. Good morning. We're at KUAM FM, Agotni, Guam. This is The Breeze, 93.9. The Link Carrier, IT&E, and Cabo Enterprises. Proud to present this episode. It's Thursday, January 28th. What's looking like a beautiful day outside.